to jump into the next segment with Bret Hart on his relationship with WWE in a post Vince McMahon era. And Bret Hart said that he feels like he has more respect now than he had when Vince was around. And he's also been doing a number of interviews. He is being inducted into the Hall of Fame for a third time, this time for a match. So we know that Bret and Vince basically had a roller coaster relationship through the years. That's not news. Bret was a multiple-time champion. He left in '97. He was one of the longest tenured competitors working for WWE at the time. And in a recent interview, Pete Rosenberg asked Bret Hart where he believes his relationship with Vince McMahon landed after all those years, and how he feels about his relationship with WWE now that Vince isn't around anymore. Hart believes that he may have more respect in WWE now and may have been vindicated after all of these years. And this is what he said. I'll be honest, I feel like I have a little more respect now. I think people are kind of going, maybe Bret Hart was right all along. I've always been kind of banished and a little bit punished for all that happened. What do you expect? He punched out the boss, he says. I knocked him out cold in the dressing room. So it's always been kind of a black spot, and maybe still is too. You can't really get away with, I can't see Wayne Gretzky doing that. He went on to say, I just kind of always felt that I was less appreciated and maybe untrusted, like where I wasn't utilized as much as I maybe could have been or should have been. In my own heart of hearts, I guess no pun intended, but he did say that, I would never change anything that I did. I did the right thing that day, and I feel like there's been a bit of an upswing or a certain sort of an appreciation more for my work rate and how hard I worked and what I contributed to the business. And Bret's match was Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13, which did take place in Chicago, is the first match inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and they call it an Immortal Moment. So we're probably going to see more of those Immortal Moments in future WWE Hall of Fames. It is Bret's third time being inducted. So in this interview, he talks about how he feels like he has more respect now than he had before Vince left. And he has had a number of appearances, I think, since Vince left. I think they had a show in Calgary last year, he made an appearance. And I think that wasn't that the episode where Gunther was basically talking about how he liked Goldberg better? And yeah. I think that was to Bret's face. So I thought that was pretty funny. But do you feel like... So what do you guys think about that commentary in terms of him feeling like he is more respected now than it was before? Do you feel like that's accurate?
I feel it is.
Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say... I think he was always respected. I think it's just like, again, like his perspective of how he kind of viewed himself in the situation, as far as like how Vince, or how he perceived Vince saw him, and how everybody else saw him in that sense, because he went through, one shitty thing after another. He was misused in WCW, and then he just kind of felt like there was no respect for him or his name. Whereas now, and after almost 20 years at this point, or more than 20 years, he's found that respect. So it's, again, I think it's just like his inner perspective of how he sees himself rather than how other people see him. Because I think the respect was always there. Because, like, I mean, Stone Cold will go back and say how he respected him, in the locker room and all this kind of stuff. Even early 2000s, I mean, plenty of people were singing his praises. So,
yeah, I mean, I think his commentary is more aimed at the like Vince McMahon administrative like apparatus of respect. I think he knows that he was respected amongst the boys, as they say, in the locker room. But I think that it was more of a commentary about WWE, the company, like the guys who make the decisions.
He gets more nods on TV, and a lot more of his stats are recognized.
Yeah, I feel like his commentary. I mean, he lived it, so he has a right to think that he's more respected now.
Yeah.
But I will say that when he had that stroke and he believes that it might have been partially because Goldberg kicked him in the head, and it led to a series of things where that led him to the hospital. Vince did reach out and contacted him when he was in the hospital in the early 2000s, and they did induct him into the Hall of Fame in 2005. They did that documentary with Bret Hart in 2005. Bret was inducted in 2006 during WrestleMania 22, and then he had that feud like 4 years later with Vince McMahon. He did the whole Shawn Michaels segment. I mean, that had to happen if Shawn Michaels was still on the roster. I feel like that had to happen, and it was honestly surreal seeing it. And I think that was the same night when TNA was trying to go live and like head to head and do their own version of the Monday Night Wars. It's during that time in 2010.
Was that
I remember because I barely the four-sider.
The four-sided, and it's like blue ropes and shit. And it was just Impact, I think.
No, that was still a little earlier.
I think they did that a little later when Eric Bischoff and Hogan were a little more ingrained in the company, but they were trying to. I think that might have been the month when Jeff Hardy showed up with like short hair and stuff too. Maybe that was around that time.
He showed up around that time.
Yeah, so I feel like, I mean, the respect. I feel like there were, like I said, olive branches that WWE gave to Bret. And I feel like in terms of respect, that might have been an internal conversation that he had, and maybe he feels, differently now. Let me ask you guys this: do you feel like let's just play with the Montreal Screwjob for a bit? Do you feel like him punching Vince out? Do you feel like that was justified? The way that they went about getting the belt off Bret Hart, do you feel like that whole situation was justified? How do you feel about it?
Absolutely. Chris? I think it was
justified. Which part?
Punching him in the face.
How would you go about like getting the belt off him? You feel like that they did him dirty?
I think there was no big deal for them to just like have him win in Canada, then drop it, whatever the next time or the next day, or he retires it on Raw the night after or whatever. Like that could have definitely been done, but Vince saw it another way.
He could have lost to somebody else.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean,
Money in the bank. No, just kidding.
Yeah, Bret did say that, like I'm giving you an option, like I'm not that kind of person, to just like take the belt and leave. And I think maybe from Vince's perspective as a business, they saw Medusa or Alundra Blaze take the women's belt and drop it in the trash on TV. So there was a precedent for a WWF wrestler going to the other team and then denigrating their belt. And he felt like there might be an issue with Bret going to WCW and doing the exact same thing. So I feel like I could see why maybe they felt like they needed to do that just to get it off him. So, he says he wants to do it and then he just keeps it for whatever reason and then he goes to WCW and drops it. But I don't know. I feel like, I think the punch was also warranted. I feel like purely based on like the kind of relationship that Bret Hart had with Vince McMahon and how he thought about the company. And he didn't want to leave, but he also, he said he had a family to raise and they were offering him more money. And Vince did not want to pay him the amount that he said he wanted to pay him for that initial contract that he signed him for. I think it was like for 15 years or something, 20 years. He would have stopped wrestling in like 06 or 07. which would have been wild to see, but that's not how things turned out. So let's see. How do you feel like? So we talked about this before, but maybe you guys had some time to think about this. How do you feel like? How different would Bret Hart's career have looked if the current Triple H was in charge back then instead of Vince McMahon? Let's say heat of the Monday Night Wars. It's not Vince and his stick, strategy. It's Triple H and his carrot strategy. But it's also the context of the Monday Night Wars. Do you feel like Triple H, the current version, would have handled things differently?
Yeah, he would have had him lose to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's just based on what we were just talking about earlier. He would talk to them, and kind of hear them out or whatever, but make some kind of a decision that made sense. I don't think he would go to that extreme because we've never seen anything like that done later ever. I mean, that was a one-off more or less. Can't think of too many screw jobs.
Well, there was, I guess, I think Wendy Richter had a screw job with Fabulous Moolah.
Oh yeah,
I think she was the Spider Lady or something like that, and that
In
was
the 80s?
that was a screw job in the 80s. Yeah, and she also had a strained relationship with WWE after that happened. I mean, obviously, like, why wouldn't you? That's not how you want to go, especially because she was like one of the top female wrestlers in the 80s. She was like one of those first women, in the rock and wrestling connection with Cyndi Lauper and all that. I mean, she was big.
Tony Storm still wants her match
With Wendy Richter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's wild. I'd see that, but I don't know if Wendy Richter's in any shape to go in the ring. She's a different woman now. But yeah, I feel like for me personally, I think Triple H would have handled it differently. But I feel like the context of the Monday Night Wars is such a like wild card because I feel like he could be like this person now where WWE is the brand, it is the product, it's not pushed in a corner, like where like they need to do whatever it takes to win and not look like fools because they were not been in a great position in '97. I mean, they were there were stories when I was reading that Nitro book about Vince McMahon, like removing water coolers and just really penny pinching in the office because they couldn't afford it allegedly, so they had to like cut all these corners for employees because they weren't making a lot of money. And that's also partially the reason why they've had this issue with Bret Hart and his contract. So that's a wild card, but I still feel like Triple H would have done it differently in his current form. Now, we know back then, and in documentaries he's admitted, when he was a wrestler, he said, if Bret doesn't want to do business, we'll do business for him. So that Triple H would have absolutely done the same thing as Vince McMahon. So I think context is important. But yeah, so like I said, Bret. So do you guys feel like Bret was truly banished, or was it more of a self-imposed exile for Mr. Hart?
Definitely
I think it was
self-imposed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he came back. Like I said, he came back in 2010. David, did you see that feud at all? I know you were. That was like when you weren't watching, right? Were you at least kind of curious about the Bret Hart stuff?
I watched him hug it out with Sean, and I signed out there.
You didn't? Did you ever see the WrestleMania 26 match?
Clips.
Yeah.
But yeah, not like.
I feel like I have to rewatch
sat down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's like a vivid thing I remember when he did that. I mean, he wasn't the same person, but I'm glad he had a match and he actually got it. And he did have a United States Championship run for a short while after that too.
Man, I do have to rewatch that shit.
And he was Natalia Neidhart's manager. Like, I think he was a manager of that Hart Foundation tag team for a little bit. And he would make, appearances here and there. So, like the olive branch was there, and he did have these opportunities. So like saying like just recently he feels like he has more respect. I don't know. Like just these past 2 years. Like for me, that seems to be a little more of a perception, for it, like inner perception, and that perception is his reality. Um, and we also did talk about this a little bit in terms of wrestlers, who have left on bad terms, and a lot of people have come back. We talked about CM Punk, Ultimate Warrior came back and got inducted, and a day later passed away, or a couple of days later, because he was inducted. They had the WrestleMania. He showed up on the Raw after WrestleMania. He was wearing that Ultimate Warrior mask. He gave an eerie speech that kind of was talking about, like, it was also almost talking about like mortality and nearing the end and that kind of thing. And then he passed away a day later. You had Sting. I mean, you had so many people who have left on bad terms and came back. Is there anybody left that you feel like that can come back, that maybe have left on bad terms, that you'd want to see back in WWE?
I mean,
Who left bad?
Sasha Banks.
Oh yeah, she walked out.
Yeah.
There you go. Mercedes Monet.
I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the bigger ones, because they left. I mean, they didn't take the belts with them. They left the belts, and it was her and Naomi left on their own terms. It was a principle thing. I do think what they did when they were talking, like, was it Michael? Well, Michael Cole probably was said to say that, but talking about how I don't know if they said shame on you, but they were talking about how they basically
quit their job.
They quit their job, like they disrespected the fans. They just kind of walked out of the business, and like they made a point of saying that.
Quitters.
Yeah, and then I mean, while this is happening, obviously the allegations and stuff was going on at the same time. So a little bit of hypocrisy there, but I feel like, again, like with Triple H now in its current era, I do think that Sasha Banks can, when she finishes her AEW run and does all she feels like she wants to do in New Japan and all those other wrestling promotions, I think she will come back. I mean, she's our age. She's 33. She could be in the wrestling business for another 15, 20 years if she wants to be. So she has plenty left, and that, like, in 15, 20 years, there's no way I feel like she wouldn't come back and get another run. So I feel like that's a good segue